All right, Monday night in the city, Soul Lounge Primetime on WHCR 90.3 FM. This is the Night Watchman. I'm here with the double G OG himself, Glenn Gilliam. What is going on?
But a pleasure to be with you, man. Thank you for
Yeah,
setting this up.
absolutely. Good to have you back. We're going to talk about sports. We're going to talk about stuff that's going on in the world. Let's start off with your favorite and DJ Leroy, who is somewhere living his best life. Love to talk about F1, and we love to talk about our man Lewis Hamilton, and he did it again, huh?
Needless to say, well, it's been 270 odd days since the season was supposed to start in
Mm-hmm.
Australia, the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, COVID took over.
Mm-hmm.
Wisely, they stopped that race literally while they were on the ground, and didn't know. Nobody had any idea when it was going to start up, how they were going to get it restarted.
Mm-hmm.
In the midst of all of that, of course, the worldwide protest that has
Mm-hmm.
grown voluminously regarding social justice issues, in particular, black
Mm-hmm.
people being killed by the state and vigilantes,
Mm-hmm.
um, has resonated with people around the world, which I think has been the most spectacular part of
Mm-hmm.
this. I mean, having white people join the protests here,
Mm-hmm.
having folks identify with Colin Kaepernick's protests in the NFL,
Mm-hmm.
taking a knee, various sports teams taking a knee. I was just blown away watching, because tennis has tried to come back as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the English players, of
Mm-hmm.
all places, I don't know if this is a Meghan Markle improvement, but even over in England, the
Mm-hmm.
English players and the referees all took a knee on the court,
Mm-hmm.
6 feet apart, social distancing,
Mm-hmm.
to represent their solidarity with the movement of
Mm-hmm.
Black Lives Matter, and just really, it's we always obviously talk about our domestic situation, but
Mm-hmm.
black people look like us around the world are suffering, of course,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and they're all taken to the streets. I mean, the pictures that were over in London were amazing.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted
There's
to throw
Lewis right
this
there.
this picture of
Yes,
Lewis with his fist up in the air after his victory. It's a
that.
great
Ah,
shot there, and I
oh my God.
understand that he was also wearing Black Lives Matter on his helmet and also a Black Lives Matter T-shirt beforehand. So he is fully representing for what's going on.
No question. But the beautiful thing, Bob, and I'm so glad you posted that, because he obviously, I mean, Lewis, the reason I love him so much, number one, he's the only black driver in the history of Formula One, not just for now, in
Mm-hmm.
history. But
Mm-hmm.
he's always identified with the civil rights here in the States, the strides that black people made here.
Mm-hmm.
He always talked about folks who he stands on the shoulders of. He
Mm-hmm.
gives immense credit to all the leaders, from obviously Martin Luther King
Mm-hmm.
on up, and he's such a knowledgeable person. And
Mm-hmm.
this is somebody who admits he wasn't the greatest student, but this is one of the most brilliant young men I've ever had the pleasure of following.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he talks about Black Lives Matter. He talks about obviously his relationship with Serena Williams and so many other stars who have
Mm-hmm.
used their platform, used their voice to
Mm-hmm.
speak out and talk
Mm-hmm.
about injustice. And he's employed Mercedes Benz, who he drives for, and he's
Mm-hmm.
been with he was 13 years old, to change the livery of their F1 car. So as you saw, he was wearing a black top.
Mm-hmm.
That's the livery of the car. And I'm sorry, I don't have one of the cars posted up for video, but you can probably pull it up somewhat easily. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
livery is, they're called the Silver Arrows, and he
Mm-hmm.
had them change the livery, and it's I mean, people are blown away. I mean, they love the
Mm-hmm.
livery. It's all black. Their
Mm-hmm.
suits are black. They have end racism on the halo of the car, which is the
Mm-hmm.
protective headgear that permanently installed on the F1 racing car. But he's created a commission, a Hamilton commission,
Mm-hmm.
and he's exploring not just F1, not just Mercedes, but a
Mm-hmm.
number of experts in different fields to
Mm-hmm.
help improve diversity within his own team. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
beautiful things I just have to say, because I think this was
Is that
even a surprise.
Now, is that
But
his
that's it right
car
there.
there? Yeah,
That
yeah,
is it. It's
yes,
beautiful.
yes,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
absolutely, yeah,
what a
yeah.
yeah. The livery is just it's blowing
Mhm,
people away.
mhm,
And the lovely thing is that they've had a black woman on the race crew team for the last couple of years,
mhm,
and she actually when the race is over and they're standing on the podium, it's
mhm,
not just the drivers, but the winning constructor team
mhm,
has one of their managers or executives take the constructors trophy because there's actually two contests going on:
mhm,
constructors contest for the
mhm,
overall manufacturer like Mercedes or Ferrari,
mhm,
and
mhm,
the individual drivers, which is kind of the more exciting part for most
mhm.
fans. But
I
she
heard
stood
it was
there,
a bad
this
day for
black.
Ferrari. I heard.
It's been a bad year
It's a
so
bad
far,
year
and we're only two races in.
Mhm,
It's been
mhm,
really. I mean, well, as you may not know, Sebastian Vettel, who's a four-time world champion and
mhm,
who's been at Ferrari now for several years,
mhm,
they did not renew his contract. They're letting him go, so
mhm,
he's out of there as of the end of this year. And
mhm,
Charles Leclerc, who's the young up and coming driver,
mhm,
will be paired with Carlos Sainz, another young up and coming driver. But the mere fact that Vettel obviously did not plan on leaving, did not know this was coming.
mhm,
Ferrari's had literally, just to show you how great Lewis is,
mhm,
Ferrari's actually had the better car in the previous from 2017 to 2019.
mhm,
If Lewis had been driving their car, he would have won.
mhm,
Um, I mean, it does get down to not just having the best equipment, but you got to have somebody behind the wheel who's got the skills. Anyway,
mhm,
not to uh, not to get into that too much, but just what Lewis is doing right now in harnessing all of this incredible power that F1 has.
mhm,
It's really a great testament. Now, of course, you couple that with what Bubba Wallace is trying to do with NASCAR.
mhm.
It's just a very it's a stunning moment in time.
Yeah.
Of course, uh,
Mhm.
from so many sides. So yeah, amazing day today. Amazing day
Yeah,
today.
and it's good to see these brothers getting their shine in motorsports, which have not always been welcoming. Let's say
Boy,
they're
that's
still not welcoming.
a brother had a
Hey,
noose
we
hanging
got
in
this
his.
noose here for you. Yeah, it's like, oh no, that's not a noose; it's a garage pull. Okay,
Oh my,
all right, okay.
and the sad part is I would have rolled with that only because just knowing the history of NASCAR, I figured everybody had that garage pull. I mean,
Mhm. Yeah,
had
yeah.
one, but the
Mhm.
mere fact that it was the only one
Mhm.
in a setup of 43 individual garages,
Mhm.
43 teams, he
Mhm.
happens to get assigned to the one with the noose. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a gambler, but man, those odds
Well,
seem really.
this is a time where they keep going with the who you gonna believe, you or your lying eyes.
Well, the saddest part is the idiots who obviously, and these are a lot of our, whatever, 45, Drumpf, whatever you want to call them, his followers, his supporters, they don't care, obviously, about the truth. That has no relevance at all.
Hmm.
The narrative that they tried to create was that, oh, Bubba Wallace is a fake. This is a hoax because the FBI came in and, yes, they determined it was a noose, which was the most important thing. And then they determined that it had been there since October of last year.
Hmm.
I mean, so for 6 months or so, everybody's been like, wow, there's a noose, no problem. It's all
Hmm.
good. Oh,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
Hey, Bubba Wallace is going to have that garage. No
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
And if his manager that handles his team wasn't black, they might not even have said anything about the news. I
Hmm.
mean, he went into the garage and saw the news
Well,
hanging there, and he's the one who spoke on it. It wasn't Bubba that found
noose hanging is as American as apple pie.
it. Jesus,
you know.
it's sad, but that's the reality that
Yeah,
we're
it
living
is a
in.
reality.
It's every. I mean, within the Star Spangled Banner. I mean,
Mhm.
you just name it. It's just everything has the pull of racism in it.
So it's
You know,
it's it's
yeah.
really interesting. Now we're at this point where between the 1-2 punch of COVID and the outrage over George Floyd, or really it's just George Floyd was just the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say. But um, such a fervor that we're actually seeing things happening, such as the Redskins actually talking about significantly changing the name, getting rid of the Redskins name, and getting rid of the Native American imagery, which is
Um, I don't even know where to start with that. That's just, I
well,
mean, the Cleveland Indians are also thankfully finally doing something. But I just have to say this: Breonna Taylor.
yeah,
Somebody arrest these murderers and
mhm,
get them convicted. This is ridiculous. I
right.
can't believe we're still talking about these folks
Right.
have not
In fact, I
arrested.
mean, we should probably start every
God,
show by calling it the "Where's the Arrest for Breonna Taylor's Murder"
Taylor's
show,
right.
because there's so much other distractions going on, and okay, that's yeah, you can name a law after her. All that. How about just getting her some basic, good old fashioned justice for her killers? How about that?
Well, whew, yeah, good old fashioned justice. What does that actually look like? Because boy,
Yeah.
is I mean, and that's the thing. All I think about this year, really, with all that's been going on, is MLK Jr.'s famous line: "Justice too long delayed is justice denied."
Hmm.
All we do is wait for recognition. I mean, one of the names that they were talking about for the Redskins were the Washington Red Tails,
Hmm.
identifying with the Tuskegee Airmen.
Hmm.
And it's like, to think that those brothers, what they did, got no recognition, no acknowledgement for like
Hmm.
50 years. I mean, nobody even gave them any props. George Lucas, one of the most prolific movie film producers ever in the world history, had to take 20 years to get one movie made.
Hmm.
Uh,
Crazy
just
with his
insanity.
and his own money. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I mean,
Hmm.
look, good on the Redskins, considering like unfortunately, like we have to deal with Dolan with the Knicks or Woody Johnson with the Jets. He's just a terrible owner, Dan Snyder, that is, and who proclaimed not 10 minutes ago he was never changing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as they say, never say never, But
Yeah,
meanwhile, in the never changing
right,
category,
right.
the Atlanta Braves say that they will not be changing their nickname, but they're going to take a further look at the future of the tomahawk chop.
Wait. This should have been a happy hour show. I need a drink. What's
Yeah, yeah. They're
this?
taking small steps down in Atlanta. We're gonna look in.
Ooh,
We're gonna set up a commission to look into this whole tomahawk chop
I, I,
thing.
I, you know, I mean, and folks were trying to, and look, I could be off, but folks were trying to say that the name Braves was actually heroic. They were trying to put some spin on it, like brave,
Well,
not brave that we see Braves. Like, nah, that's not it. I mean, I don't believe Braves, as it relates to Native Americans, was supposed to be a compliment or some, they've got it so twisted. It's just wrong.
hmm hmm
It's just,
hmm
yeah, tomahawk chop. Good lord. I mean,
yeah.
and I used to love watching the Florida State Seminoles. I mean,
Hmm.
but seeing, the white guy come out with the whole headdress and the spear and the flaming spear, and he throws it down, and oh my God, it's no, it's
Well, I mean, we both went to a school that had that
oh
imagery, and thankfully they let that go before we got there. But there were still some of those alumni that wanted to come out with that wahoo wah nonsense.
oh my
It's like,
God, yeah,
you
voice
know,
of the wilderness. I mean,
hmm
that's what it felt like. That was probably the best description for brothers going up into the mountains with 8 months of snow. But yeah, no, it's I mean it's a look, it's difficult, and we've had plenty of conversation about how difficult it is to just balance people dying on the regular,
hmm
folks being murdered on the regular, and recognizing the transformation that's actually somewhat taking shape. I mean,
hmm
it's happening amidst the presidential election with all just types of buffoonery going on and
hmm
unity and craziness. And yes, once again, black people have to make the choice of, the lesser of two evils. I mean, I don't want to say Joe Biden's an evil. I'm not going to go there, but I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're not excited about a Joe Biden presidency, but what we're excited about is a not Donald Trump presidency. So
Well,
that's something that we can all get some energy behind. And oh, by the way,
yes.
I think there was a turning point today. So I heard a Joe Biden I don't know if it was an ad or it was a clip, but I was listening to it and I was saying, you know what? I think it finally happened. I think Obama is writing lines. I think Obama might be writing bars for Joe. I'm serious. I heard this thing today, and I'm listening to the cadence, and it was like it was so simple, and it was so direct, and it was so on point. It's like, who is this again? And then I'm listening to it, and then I'm like, let me hear it again in Obama's voice, and I'm like, I, I think Obama is now ghostwriting lyrics for Joe Biden, and I think this might be the turning point for him. I think he might actually start getting people to listen to him.
Was this a commercial
It
or
was either a commercial or it was some kind of you
speech or
see all
something?
these media clips on
Right,
Facebook or
right.
whatever, but I'm listening to it and Joe Biden is talking about Trump and how he's dropped the ball, and it's like, and he's like, yeah, that was very succinct, that was very concise, and then I was
Right.
like, wait a minute, wait a minute, because I also get these like Joe Biden commercials like, hi, I'm Joe Biden and I want to ask you to help me out and aw shucks join my campaign, and then I find myself waking up and like, what were you saying? What?
Oh my
You,
God.
who are you again, Uncle Joe? So the fact that I didn't fall asleep between the beginning and the end of the clip was really like, wait a second, because I was actually agreeing with it, and then I was like,
Oh my gosh.
I think, I think, I think Barack is, you know,
I mean, look, we have to stipulate that Barack's team of speechwriters, uh, they've been unparalleled. I mean,
mm,
of course, Barack always gave it the final what's over, and it was always his input, of course, that mattered.
right. But Barack could also go off the top of the
Oh no,
dome too,
no
you
question.
know.
I mean, without a doubt. I'm just
Right.
saying, if Joe's got any sense, and I believe that's been proven that he has some sense, he is employing as many of Barack's team as possible. I think on several fronts. Uh,
Well, is this something we know, or are you surmising? Because
well, I mean,
I,
look, we know that we know that the young lady, oh my gosh, from MoveOn.org, who's now part of his team, was
mhm,
part of Barack's team. Um,
okay.
you know, having not identified black women there. I mean, Simone Sanders has been there
Hmm.
from the jump, uh,
Hmm.
which is a positive. Um, but I believe, from the fundraising standpoint as well, I think he's got a good amount of Barack's bundlers.
Hmm.
I've got some inside information on that.
Okay, good, good. Because I just felt like I've seen him just when he talks, I just cringe sometimes, and I'm like, who's who's mapping out his strategy? Because one of the things that I think and this is not just a Joe Biden criticism, it's a criticism
Sure.
of Democrats as well,
Mm.
that there are so many things that 45 has done that are so egregious that it's time to go back through and make a list of the things other than racism, and
Oh,
misogyny, and it's like, how about the crimes that just have been committed that we're not even looking at, even from the whole relationship of Ivanka and Jared Kushner to this
please.
administration, if they've got a chance to basically run around the world securing the bag for the Trump family, and this is a obvious constitutional violation of the emoluments clause. Um, I don't know why they didn't throw that into the impeachment proceedings. I mean, there are so many things that I feel like crimes that were committed, and I just feel like part of the problem is that our Congress was complicit in so many things that they don't go after things that might come back to blow back to look at them as well. You know.
Look, I concur with that to a large degree. I think the unfortunate thing is number one, politicians in general, Democrat and Republican, and obviously more Republican than Democrat, but they treat voters and citizens like kids or like
Mhm,
who don't understand things or can't
mhm,
rationally understand more than one thing at a time.
mhm,
And sadly, look, we had the Mueller report, which was 400 and some odd pages, and
mhm,
we know the crimes that were delineated in there. The mere fact that Nancy Pelosi, for whatever you think of her, I think actually got the strategy right in terms of waiting, in terms of the impeachment situation, because the timing was going to be it was going to be troublesome either way.
mhm.
The unfortunate thing is that, and that's what I really wanted to get to, is Mitch McConnell is the real problem. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely, yes.
yeah, amidst the fact that Donald is just unacceptable on every level,
Mhm,
criminally and socially and empathetic, just all of it.
mhm,
It can't, none of it happens unless Mitch McConnell signs off and co-signs all of
mhm,
it. And
mhm,
only his assurances with William Barr getting put in as the AG,
mhm.
uh, and that's another piece, allowing Rudy Giuliani to conduct state business.
Oh, this is what I'm saying. All these things. Rudy
Right.
Giuliani, who's not even in government anymore, is allowed to go and conducts business outside the State Department. Bill
In Donald
Barr,
Trump's name, in the
yeah,
president's name, right?
Bill Barr is an abomination to the legal profession, and the fact that he's the Attorney General of the United States is just
And I
it's
have to put the Democrats on the hook for that because most of them approved him. I mean, they put
mhm,
the fool through, and they knew the audition letter he wrote against Bob Mueller before he took the seat. So
mhm,
it's not like you didn't know what this guy
mhm,
was up to. I
mhm,
mean, and that's the part I guess I threw my hands up earlier. It's part of my exercise routine. I just throw my hands up now because I'm
mhm,
so frustrated. But why we're just letting all of this stuff kind of just happen, it seems. And I
mhm,
don't want to just say the Democrats, okay, yes, they've got the House, thankfully. And that's really the biggest proof that Donald's going to lose this year.
mhm, mhm,
Really, quite honestly, has no coattails. I mean, he's lost just about every race he's put his hands on
mhm.
since he took the presidency. But I mean, this is a guy who the first pictures that came out of the White House was him backslapping Kislyak and Lavrov in the Oval Office after he fired his FBI director. I mean, if forget Obama, if anybody had Clinton, if he had tried that, I mean,
Well,
this.
let's talk about this Roger Stone pardon.
Oh,
You
good
know,
Lord.
so I mean, it's just it's not they're not even trying to hide. And then the
At all.
most offensive picture I saw today was Roger Stone sitting around having drinks with his boys,
Right.
throwing white power signs up with all of them at the table, throwing the white power signal. And it's like, all right, so we're not even attempting to hide. Here it is. I'm free. You know,
Yeah.
so
No, I mean, look,
what does that mean for the American justice system? It means there
well,
is none.
no, exactly. I mean, we keep talking about he wants to act like a king or an autocrat. He's doing it. He's
Mm-hmm,
pardoning every criminal he can,
mm-hmm,
regardless of crime.
mm-hmm,
He's commutating sentences. I mean, that was a situation with he actually didn't pardon Roger Stone.
mm-hmm.
He commutated his sentence.
Yeah,
Sheriff Arpaio, who's running the prison camps there in Arizona.
right.
I mean, you
Yeah.
name it, up and down the
Mm-hmm,
list, and it's like, you know, I mean, I guess it's too much to think of pitchforks in the street. Although I mean, obviously we've had this galvanization behind Black Lives Matter, thank God, and these murders.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's just been, the ethics. The director of the Office of Ethics retired. I mean, he left because the stuff was so overwhelming, and nobody was allowing him to do his job in
Hmm.
terms of getting Trump's taxes and all of that stuff. He just said,
Hmm.
"I'm out of here." What am I, Jared and Ivanka, like you mentioned earlier, uh, they're getting national security clearances and all of just, I mean, the most ridiculous types of. I mean, if Obama had brought family in, could you just imagine? It
Or
would have never
or
happened.
if Obama had fired all the inspector generals, the people whose jobs it actually is to keep the government from being ripped off from the inside. So they,
Intelligence agencies, you name it. I mean,
Mhm,
generals. I mean, this guy has. I mean, he's acting like an autocrat. He's embraced all of these enemies, and I definitely don't want to make this show just about him because it just makes your head explode. But
mhm.
Mitch McConnell needs to be getting the same energy we're giving Trump, really,
Oh yeah, no
because
question.
yeah, I mean, when Obama came into office, this. I mean, we couldn't have foreseen a pandemic of this nature, but the economy, the global economy, was on the edge of a cliff. I mean,
Hmm.
it was bottoming out.
Hmm.
Nobody wanted the job. The inbox was
Hmm.
ridiculous,
Hmm.
and yet with 10 million Americans or 10% unemployment and mortgage crisis up the yin yang and all the terrible.
Hmm.
And the Republicans were having dinner the night of his inauguration saying, "We're going to ruin this guy." I mean, is that supposed to be helping your constituency? That you're going to ruin the newly elected president? I mean, who had an overwhelming, popular majority and everything else. I mean, it's just amazing. They have no shame. They could care less about the
Hmm.
constituency. They would rather gut this Democratic president at a time we're in almost a Great Depression. Uh, I just don't understand the rationale of conservatives who say they can ride with these fools. I don't get it.
Well, I mean, now we're forced to confront the reality of racism in America. It's like this whole process has been like a big X-ray to show us where the cancer has metastasized, and it's definitely at 1600 Black Lives Matter Plaza. So let's talk about that a little bit
Oh
because
God,
so the symbolic. I loved it when it was first done by the mayor of Washington D.C. I think it's like she had an idea one day, or somebody brought it, and she had it done the next, and nobody was expecting it, and it was timely, and you know, but when we started doing it here, I was like, there's a little bit of Me Tooism here,
mm,
and I have two ways I feel about it. One is that symbols are important, and especially
no
now
question.
because symbols have been, 45 is certainly weaponized, the use of symbols, and so
Sure.
him, tear gassing the protesters so he could stand in front of a church with a
Oof.
Bible, which was upside down, by the way. So I don't know if that was ignorance or some side, some kind of
The
satanic.
evangelical prefer it that way. They prefer their Bibles upside down.
Yeah, but the fact is that symbols are important now. So I get that, you know, some of the things that are happening on a symbolic level. They do have an impact, but I fear that symbols are not like real systemic changes. And,
Of course not.
having some yellow paint on our streets, look, the process of that happening was important. And some of it was feel good, some of it was just petty. You know, I don't care, but it's kind of petty to put Black Lives Matter in front of Trump Tower.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
I'm I'm down with it, but that's on a from a longer term basis, that's not about engaging in a real change. It's surface, but it doesn't address real problems. And my biggest concern is that, we get caught up in too much energy in symbolic stuff, and then we get to the point where the goodwill that we have now turns into August fatigue, and by September it's like, isn't it enough? We changed the names of our beloved sports teams, and we wrote on the street, "Isn't racism over yet? Isn't it over yet?" I'm just tired of talking about it. Okay, I mean, I don't have a racist bone in my body. Okay, I empathize. I have a black friend. I have two. Well, one and a half maybe.
Hey, look, there's a lot of that going around.
There's a lot of that going around.
I wasn't really a fan of doing it in DC at first,
Uh
and
huh.
and for specifically that reason.
Hmm.
I just thought it was, look, of course anybody gets it. If you're in a spaceship, you could get it because you could probably see it from space. But
Right.
it just, you know, at a time where you've got the eyes and ears of the world focused on specifically black people
Hmm.
and trauma, this terrorism that we've been living under for
Hmm.
so long. Tell me about, how you're going to change up the DAs and the judges, or how you're going to, rearrange this system so it is not, these grand juries, so it is not the death sentence for black folks. So we're not dealing with, and maybe we should segue because we've been talking about it as far as Ava DuVernay's 13th, as well as this more recent documentary, Crime and Punishment.
Yeah. So let's
Um,
talk about that.
yeah, I mean, I'll just say Ava DuVernay's 13th is a great documentary, and a great documentary only because, and I say only because, it attacks a subject matter that is at the crux of why this system has been institutionalized and corrupt from day one, in terms of law and order, or the idea behind uh, the criminalization of our communities. The 13th Amendment was to abolish slavery, and the loophole they put in it was except for criminals. So now you freed these people who now have no jobs, who now are scattering as much as they can, trying to get away, even though plenty of them, stuck around. I mean, folks, were indentured in a lot of cases, but most importantly, you took the opportunity, as far as white folks were concerned, to say, okay, we had to free you as slaves, but now we can criminalize this whole community, put you in prison, and now you have to do the work anyway. So
Hmm.
we've got more stolen labor. The most important part about that is the prison system from word go was about money. It was about making money. It was about stealing
Hmm.
labor,
Right.
producing, and not paying. And black people were suffering because of it. And now they have the additional yoke of crime and being a felon or what have you.
Hmm.
You're ruining people's lives. You're separating families all over again. All of the above. And then we evolved through Jim Crow and legal segregation to get to prisons being private and being traded on the stock exchange.
Hmm.
And who's the commodity? The commodity is clearly
Well, I mean, when you finally go back and pull back all the layers,
right.
what we've come to find that the entire financial system of this country is built
Yes,
on the legacy of slavery, because what made slavery work was the insurance,
exactly.
that they actually had insurance on the slaves, and
Oh, sure.
and when they would, how many slaves died just to collect the policy. It was a particular case that was so egregious that that was what caused the beginning of the end of Britain ending slavery. And that was the case where um, they had so many losses on the sea, and they were behind, and they were running out of food, and so just before they got into
Mm,
London, they basically just threw all the rest of the slaves overboard and killed them so that they could collect on their policy because they were all dead. I
Yeah.
mean, so, you know, the egregious nature, and then the fact that it's just a matter of fact that it becomes each of those lives is actually a ledger entry, you
Yep.
know. And so when you talk about, you know, the all of our early financial institutions that can trace their roots to this economic activity, and then when you bring it through, and that's why Ava DuVernay's 13th was such a master work, because it connected the dots, it had the
Exactly.
receipts, you know,
Right.
it was very dispassionate, so it wasn't like, I mean, like a Michael Moore documentary has a level of that. You get his anger and frustration,
Right.
whereas this was like, it was like, I'm not giving, you know, Abe was not, she's not going to give you that because she
Right.
wants you to pay attention to the details and hear the receipts. Here is, you know, here are Nixon's henchmen, his lieutenants talking about the Southern strategy. It's not my
Mm-hmm.
words putting in their mouth. You're hearing it from their mouth. And so she laid out the case from then until now in a way that is so expertly done that I feel like that documentary should be required watching in every school in America.
No question about it.
Hmm.
And yeah, every school, every corporation, every law
Hmm.
enforcement agency. I mean, quite honestly, it should be part of curriculum
Hmm.
anywhere and
Yo.
from grade school to university. And I'll say the great part is that this great piece, Crime and Punishment, about uh, the New York 12, which is the
Hmm.
12 black and Latino officers who so courageously, I mean, we know what Serpico went through, and he was white.
Hmm.
We know the
Hmm.
corruption that he dealt with. We
Hmm.
know that black undercover officers are routinely killed by friendly fire. I mean, we all of the trappings that are that black people have dealt with trying to be part of this blue wave, this police fraternity, for whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
but it's grounded in corruption because this talks about the quota system of arrest and tickets, and more importantly, arrest, and how this brother, uh, oh my God, Edward Raymond, who is the prominent litigant, who's a lieutenant within the police force, super intelligent. I mean, this brother could have been anything,
Hmm.
and the fact that he chose to be a cop because as a kid he was treated, he was fine until he was about 13, 14, 15.
Hmm.
That's when he started going up against the wall by the cops, rummaging through his pockets,
Hmm.
unwarranted, illegal,
His
uh,
searches.
all
Yeah.
of and seizure, all of that. And
Hmm.
he saw all of his friends being treated the same way. He said he wanted to be on the other side of that to see what the heck was going on and how can he be an actual servant to the community as opposed to what he had experienced. And it's just, I mean, I can't say enough good. This guy is amazing. I mean, he's young,
Hmm.
and he does these surreptitious recordings along with several other cops who are part of this New York 12
Hmm.
of his superiors who talk about the fact. I mean, his immediate superior was talking about, you know, he gave him a terrible review in terms of their annual reviews or however they do it,
Hmm.
and this guy knew. I mean, I'm sorry, Sergeant Raymond knew he didn't deserve that kind of rating, and he said, "Well, how are you basing that? I've never had that before. I've done my job, even if I don't have the numbers that everybody else has. My numbers aren't low." And he's talking about numbers of arrest,
Hmm.
columns,
Hmm.
and the guy is saying, no, it's just about the numbers, and it's another thing. And and he's like, well, tell me what's going on. He said, you really want to know? And he says, please, I've got to understand this. He says, you're a young black guy with dreadlocks, and the superiors were basically saying, F this nigga. I mean, basically they were saying, F
Hmm.
this dude, F this
Hmm.
dude.
Hmm.
And he said, and he's made it a point to let folks know, yes, the cops are, they have their orders. They
Hmm.
are forced to do things in many cases they don't want to do. That doesn't explain away the murders, the Eric Garners, the chokehold. That doesn't
Mm-hmm.
explain away half of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a hierarchy that he says, and I've always, everything starts at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Bratton is a racist bastard, and he got thrown out because he got busted. And
Mm-hmm.
all of these, I mean, Bernard Kerik, I had the nerve to sue him about something. They had him on as some kind of an expert analyst. I'm like, this guy was in prison. I mean,
Yeah,
what
he's
are
a
we doing with this?
well he has seen both sides of the criminal justice system. Well, we'll give him that level of expertise.
But that's and my last point here is, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be hogging this, just to the point that it's the DAs and judges and commanders that sanction all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That the DAs and police are obviously, they're too close.
Mm-hmm.
They act like they're bound at the hip. They want, and the police unions have too much power and control. I mean, it is an absolute travesty, and that's why we imprison more people. We've got 5% of the world's population and 25% of their prison population,
Mm-hmm.
and disproportionate amount of that, of course, are black folks. And he talks about it expressly. He's so talented and eloquent. He talks about the fact that this is cash. Every black body that's arrested means money. And
Right.
that's, and the whole bail bonds. I mean, all of these corrupt systems
The
that surround.
whole system is nothing but interlocking revenue streams, whether it's
Exactly.
the collect phone call
Exactly.
$1 billion scam to the
Exactly.
and speaking of insult on injury, so the judge in Pennsylvania who was convicted a few years ago for selling convictions. You must have heard this story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think
Right.
so. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
they let him out because of COVID.
Oh, are you
Yes.
serious?
I am serious. I read that today. Yes.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's no justice, just us.
No, I mean, no,
You know.
exactly. Well, I mean, somebody else was using the cover of COVID for an early release or oh my
It
God.
was Michael Flynn, obviously
Uh,
Roger
yes,
Stone.
some nonsense. I mean, no, Roger Stone
Yeah.
was trying to propagate some of that nonsense.
Hmm.
But I think that's, the critical part. Watching DA Mosley in Baltimore trying to
Oh
fight
my
for Freddie
God.
Gray,
Wow.
and the way they tore her apart. Number one, this country's culture of ripping whistleblowers apart.
It's awful.
We don't take care of
Awful.
whistleblowers.
Yeah.
We, the funniest thing, I always kind of think about this, and we never talk about the abolitionists. I mean, the white ones.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're like, John Brown, that whole crew. They're
Right.
like persona non grata. I mean,
Hmm. Right. They never did
right,
that John Brown movie.
right.
Woo.
I mean,
Okay,
it's
so
amazing how the
let's
white folks who are on
for
the right
some
side of
of our audience who may not know who John Brown is, why don't you elaborate?
Okay. Well, I mean, look, and I don't want to get in over my head because I haven't studied up on him recently. But John Brown was an abolitionist. I mean, he literally was about trying to not only free slaves, but he was fighting against, obviously, the chattel slavery industry. But this is a guy who, and I apologize. I mean, I should have better information, but look him up.
Yeah.
Let me
Well,
engage the
the
audience.
the short
Right,
version
right.
is
I'm sorry.
he was
Please.
a white man who was fighting against slavery and was ready to kill other white men over slavery.
Fair enough. Yes.
And they killed him.
Right. Okay.
that's
Fair. There
that's
you go.
those are the high points. It's
Right.
like
And amidst all of the tear down of these Confederate statues, I'm
mhm,
sure there's a John Brown statue somewhere. I don't know if it's just in
mhm,
the cemetery or wherever, but it's
mhm,
just amazing how, I mean, look, it's the twilight zone for anybody of color
mhm,
in this country. Because we know of the atrocities to Native people. We know how Asians, Chinese were treated. I mean,
mhm,
obviously the Japanese poorly treated, but they did get some recourse. They did have some remuneration afforded to
mhm,
them. Jewish people, we know they continue to get their payment.
Mm-hmm.
That's an annual situation, and I'm not mad at them. They've made their case and they've got their leverage, so
Mm-hmm.
they make sure you're not going to forget and you're not going to stop paying us. You
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
know, but for us, and that's at the heart of everything that I try to talk about is we're not going to change anything until we're ready to start talking about reconciliation and reparations. And
Mm-hmm.
however that needs to be examined, HR 40, you want to
Mm-hmm.
bring the commission together to actually go through you can go to Randall Robinson's book, The Debt, and you want to start
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
But, that is, there's, you would have gotten over if you had only been able to give us 40 acres and a mule. That
Right,
was a
right,
bar.
right. That would have been it,
That
and you can say
reconstruction.
we did it then, but they never did it then. And
No.
then, when you're making the case for reparations, there are so many things that happened in between the end of slavery and now that
Oh,
we
sure.
we from the land giveaway to white people in the western United States, the
Sure.
land grabs that have had from us, the FHA loans that were given out. I saw something the other day about Levittown, and I knew that Levittown was
Oh, yeah.
racist, and I knew that they had things in the deeds where the
Right.
houses couldn't be sold to black people. But I did
Exactly.
not know until recently that that was something that was part of the FHA provisions. It was
Sure.
actually
Oh,
part of the financial structure that and with the FHA complicity, that's that's more grounds for more reparations. So I
well, I
mean, I
mean,
think it's time for us to start getting the old adding machine out and
well, I mean, and the critical thing is that, of course, that's the default for everybody who doesn't want to even deal is, oh, you just want to check. No. Now, it's not just wanting a check, but as Randall Robinson says, that's a good place to start.
Mhm,
But there not only needs to be a check, but look, I always say the first thing I want when the reparations agenda is put forth, I want my DNA charted back to where I came from. I want the hut I came out of in Africa,
mhm,
where my people came from.
mhm,
Giving us our identity, I mean, I think would just be huge. I mean, it can't just be for celebrities that can afford Skip Gates to
mhm,
do the back tracing. I think if everybody was able to know where they come from and have that connection, I think that's important. But then whether it's education or taxes or, I mean, it just runs the gamut. The bottom line is don't let the good become the enemy of the perfect. I mean, we're
mhm,
never going to get reparations. As I say,
mhm,
the justice too long delayed has been denied. But that shouldn't stop us from making whatever appropriation can be. I mean, the folks in Tulsa are still waiting for some of their money.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and we can't do this town by town. This is ADOS, and there needs to be uh, whether it's supporting the HBCUs and providing scholarships for anyone who qualifies, whatever it may be,
mhm,
making sure those endowments are straight, you name it. I mean, definitely on the education side, the grade school level education where we're just passing kids through who don't have the basic tools to even think about higher education
mhm,
because they haven't been taught anything. And that
mhm,
we know that public school system has been abandoned since basically integration. I mean,
mhm. Well,
that's
we're in an
that's kind of
interesting time because everything is up for review now.
yes.
The question of even whether it's safe to send your kids to school in September is something that I'm sure is weighing on the minds of many, many parents right now, and probably a lot more parents are looking at homeschooling. Because
Okay.
uh, you know, you probably get a better education. Certainly, when it comes to there's so much that doesn't get taught in terms of our education, and you have our kids growing up with no knowledge of self, and that's just it's dangerous. We cannot have
Yeah.
another generation of kids grow up not knowing anything about their history, not knowing about Black excellence and Black achievement, which has always continued to happen despite the yoke of oppression of slavery and racism in this country. We've had tremendous stories of Black excellence, but the problem is they don't survive from generation to generation because we're not in a position, not controlling our educational system. Certain stories don't get told, and so Marcus Garvey gets related to a paragraph, something about, going back to Africa. And no one talks about the birth of the Buy Black movement in the UNIA and in
Sure.
basically an operating model where, here in Harlem, blocks around me, I know that 100 years ago this year, you I
Right.
could go to um I could go to a grocery store, I could go to three restaurants, two grocery stores, I could go to a laundry, I can go to a hat store, all of them owned by the UNIA, all of them
Sure.
operating in this community, all of them recirculating dollars around. So everybody's talking about what we need to do, what we need to do. That blueprint has already been, it's 100 years old already. So not that we shouldn't still be doing it, but we're not inventing the wheel. We're going back to what's already been done, but unfortunately no one told us it was done. And so we have
Right.
generations who've grown up and who have no idea. That we kind of know about X, we kind of know about King, we kind of know about the Panthers, and even those stories, those narratives have been bastardized. Yeah,
Diluted, bastardized. Well, I mean,
yeah.
to take up that point, Bob, because it's so critical. Number one, I mean, because we just kind of tiptoe around it. Black history here in America is American history. I mean, it's not. We keep separate. We always want to separate. Oh, black on black crime. We don't talk about white on white crime, but we
Mm-hmm,
have we have black history, which is a separate entity which has been removed.
mm-hmm,
Uh, Not that it was ever included, but you've got at least places like Philly who made it mandatory to have Black history as part of the curriculum there.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
How we've gone so far in New York and never made it mandatory, but the mere fact that we could exclude a whole, I mean, just a huge part of American history and act like our kids aren't going to end up being 40th on the list of, kids around the world who don't know anything. Um, but on top of that, we've got to start at the core, at the beginning, because African history has never been taught to us. As far
mm-hmm,
we know about Europe, we know about Asia. As far as I knew, the Chinese and the Greeks invented everything. I
mm-hmm.
mean, we never got taught about, I mean, everything I heard about Timbuktu until I got to college, it was the butt of a joke. I
Right,
mean, it was,
right,
I
right,
didn't even think it
right.
was a real place. I just thought it was some weird
Right,
place.
and no one told us that that's where the university started, and the Greeks went there to learn, and
It was a seat of
no one talks about the birth of mathematics and algebra and all these things that came out of the continent, and it's like we were taught, Tarzan was running around, and he was some white man from England who decided to relocate because he could just run everything, king of the jungle or whatever nonsense. I mean,
yeah.
the
Well, I mean, the sad
narrative.
part. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just like, I think about the narratives we've had to endure. I think Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben are finally glad that they can retire.
Oh my
you
God.
know, but I actually feel like I would like to bring them back and trade them out for Candace Owens and Terry Crews, and you
Woo!
know, you know,
Chris been
because
taking it on. Yeah.
because let's look, Aunt Jemima, all she ever tried to sell us was some flour. Uncle Ben, all he ever tried to sell us was some rice. That stuff that Candace Owens is trying to sell us is toxic.
No. Look, the thing I wanted to say, because that imagery is obviously, I mean, world renowned in the sense that it's been around for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time I ever saw pictures of black kings and queens was on a Budweiser poster. I mean, to think that was a
Wow.
promotion that beer company had
Yeah.
come up with. And it was like they had a calendar. It was like, wow.
Well,
Why didn't we
one
think
thing
about this? Yeah. I'm
American
sorry.
companies have showed us that black consumer dollars matter.
Oh, and unfortunately, it's all that matters to them. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's sad how, and they've had Africans believing that, you know, their history didn't start until white folks showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And we're the cradle of civilization. I mean, it's just so. I mean, there's really so much, obviously, miseducation and re-education that needs to take place. But there's no better time than right now.
Absolutely.
There's yeah. Go ahead.
So we're coming close to the end of our time here. Any thoughts you wanted to share that we didn't get out? We talked a little bit about sports. We didn't talk
Well,
about the. Yeah,
I
go
just want to
ahead.
say, because I just have to say this as many times as I can. Breonna Taylor. But but this is the 100th anniversary,
Mm-hmm.
2020, of the Negro Leagues, which was
Mm-hmm.
founded organizationally in 1920,
Mm-hmm.
and there have been some celebrations of that that included the Negro League Museum and Major League Baseball. But Major League Baseball needs to get off their butt, just create a wing at the Hall of Fame Museum,
Cooperton. Yep.
and, in Cooperstown, and just put them all in there,
Mm-hmm.
because black baseball did more to improve the game and provide the stars that led the game than anything else in their
Mm-hmm.
history. And
Mm-hmm.
all of the references to people who came or played or did whatever they did before black folks were included
Mm-hmm.
don't mean jack. I do have to say that this is the 70th anniversary of Althea Gibson breaking
Mm-hmm.
the color barrier in tennis. And as you can see, I'm
Yes. Yes.
usual
Althea was
flag,
first.
Althea action, yes. And
Yes.
we'll leave something in the description where you can get some of this finery. But
Right.
no, but I do want
Absolutely.
to say, you know, there's such a groundswell now to find out. And look, we know a lot of it is just CYA. Let me put some money out there and cover my
Mm-hmm.
butt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Netflix is dropping $100 million on black banks.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I
That's
don't think
real.
that's real. That's
That's
real.
yeah. So.
That's important. And
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of companies, Walmart, McDonald's, the usual suspects, who are
Mm-hmm.
willing to put X amount of millions of dollars behind, things they can write a check on.
Right.
We have to take that money, utilize it well, develop curriculums, develop opportunities to get this education out, because obviously we just skim the surface on a few things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's and on our part, we do have to buy black. We do have to, with this whole education thing and kids, whether they can go back to school or not, we do have
Mm-hmm.
to find a way, if we are homeschooling, to include our history in there. We've got to
Yeah.
find a way to give it to them, because the
So
school system at this point is not prepared. Sorry.
yeah. So thank you, Glenn Gilliam, for joining us on Soul
Oh,
Lounge Prime Time on
thank you.
WHCR 90.3 FM. Sorry, DJ Leroy, we're out of time. We can't have you on today, but maybe next week. See you later.
Love it. Great.